shift for today. And I wanted to just give you some insight in what my guides have been calling me to look at, and perhaps that you may find useful as we sort of move into a new month of July, where there's a lot of planets on the move again. And there's a lot of opportunity for us to really deepen into looking at where we are perhaps avoiding certain things, and to complete some of the work that you have been deepening into over the past 6 months. And the theme that's coming up is around integration and our interconnectedness, where we are no longer seeing ourselves as separate. Chiron is coming up in the middle of the month in retrograde, and Chiron is the planet of the wounded healer. So we're really being asked to look at our wounds in relationship to the nervous system of the collective. And in order to do that, you may be triggered. There may be a lot coming up around anger, at where you have been lying to yourself, and perhaps where you've been avoiding looking at certain things. And when we look at indecision, it really is a feeling, a felt sense of that you're not feeling safe in the world to actually do the work that's being asked of you to do. And in order to do that, we need to look at the nervous system of the collective, which at the moment is in a place of confusion and a lot of movement, and where we're being called to really break free from any limiting beliefs that we're still carrying, and toxic codependency patterns, and where we are perhaps going to be antagonized in and triggered to get angry about our own denial and our own spaces of self-abandonment or self-rejection, and really heal that chironic wound and take a really honest look at ourselves and our conflicting ideas and our feelings about what's going on in the world. And I spoke about surrendering and letting go as not so much as an out there construct, and bringing it back to where we are right now, that we're not separate from the world. We don't live on the earth. We are part of the earth, and we are part of nature, and our body is evidence that it is alive within us. And when we look at trauma, this is where we go into suffering, and we go into that wounded space, because we split off from our bodies. We disown our bodies, and we disown the earth as our body. And if we can't care for ourselves in a daily practice of what would love do in this situation, then we create symptoms, and we feel separate, and we feel that we are not supported. So this is what I love about the shadow work, and being able to really have a somatic release in the body, which is our body constantly giving us the feed where we don't feel safe in the world, and to really refine the perception of our life and our body, and where do you feel me and where do I feel you. And when we can start to release this in the collective, we have to include our ancestral and our familial trauma wounds and integrate that in a place, so that we can return to our humanity and to the planet, and to know that we are made up of life in the way that we're choosing to move through certain obstacles and pain. And that requires active participation. So we have to be willing to ground and anchor into our truth. And this has been the theme of the whole year, actually more than the whole year, where we have to look at where the lies and lines and manipulation have been fragmenting and splitting us and separating us from our whole. So how can we contribute, each of us, as we move forward to healing the nervous system of the collective, is by doing the work on our own nervous systems and getting to the root cause of what is creating the separation, what is creating the uncertainty, and to really have an ownership of our sense of being here as active and willing participants, even though sometimes we feel like we have no choice and we are not wanting to participate, and where that indecision comes up in us, to look at what can I be in this moment? What can I choose in this moment in order to create safe embodiment, to really feel safe in our bodies? Because we cannot change what we're not acknowledging is there in the first place. So naming it and deepening into that place of, where do I feel connected? And the duality and the paradox of it, that we can feel very connected in moments of meditation, of dream space, of astrally traveling, and at the same time not feel safe in our bodies, still feel those trauma wounds viscerally in our bones. So when we start to integrate these fragmented parts and pieces of ourselves, then we can thrive beyond this reactive thinking and then acting out in unlove, right? The opposite of love. And a great way to do that as part of your daily practice just for today is to ask, who am I being? Who am I in my humanity reflected back onto myself? So the microcosm of the microcosm again, of what we see outside of ourselves that we don't like, or that makes us feel uncomfortable, or triggers an anger response where we lash out in hurt. Where is that ready to be, first of all, having the introspection of it? So the theme of introspection for July. And when we get that awareness of where we are hurting in ourselves and where we are seeing that reflected outward in the collective, in our nervous system reflecting the collective nervous system, then we can start to integrate those fragmented parts and pieces of ourselves and create our own internal safety. So when you start looking at what's out there, where are you in the system? Where does that put you? So these are wonderful questions to ask as part of your inquiry, to look at, how do I come back into a place of interconnectedness where I am interdependent, not codependent? And how do I go into relational reciprocity of that? Because I am part of the system, I am part of holism. And I think we have to go very holographic on this and really expand ourselves outside of our current level of comfort, which probably isn't very comfortable. So look at the parts of you that are authentic, that are in alignment, that are congruent with your truth and your values and what matters to you. And then when you are intimate with those parts, then you can start to become more intimate with the whole. And there is an absence of attachment. There's an absence of judgment there. There's an absence of fear. So then you will be able to make right relationship, make good choices, and stop disconnecting to your true nature and nature herself. So just remember too that defensiveness is often the death of effective communications. When we look at it, the minute that we put our armor up and we start putting heart walls up, and we're not listening anymore, we're not tuning in. I cannot feel you anymore because I'm feeling all the unresolved trauma in me. And I stop that connectedness and the intimacy of being in a space of allowing myself to be vulnerable enough to speak my truth. So I always ask myself, would I rather be a right in having to defend my point of view, or am I willing to be wrong and free? Because again, there is no right or wrong. There is only the power of choice to choose what is aligned for you right now and to let other people have their own experiences. So remember that, when we're programmed from birth to compete and to judge and demand and to diagnose and to think, and that's very right, wrong, and separating, that there is no we. We are not in this together if we cannot be compassionate to, first of all, the parts that are hurting in us, meeting the parts that are hurting in others from a place of total allowance. It stops us from being present to be able to have the introspection that's being called for this month, to look at what do I need to meet in this moment? What is underneath the anger? And then we can start to use anger as a potency to move obstacles out of our way and no longer have to hurt ourselves or hurt others in the process when we're feeling powerless or uncertain or unsafe. So just notice what needs to be witnessed right now, with no judgment. And I know it's difficult to not be in judgment and to let go, because we've been entrained in the lie that letting go means that you're going to lose something. And there's a lot of places where we feel like we're entitled, that things should be different to what they are, that, every time you hear yourself saying, it should have been, and if only, and we're in that place of the past, that we can't change the past, but we can learn from it. And in the dynamic of expansion, we can be present to start to create a future that we want, that is thriving, that is more ease, that is more joy, that is more calm. And that's a healthy nervous system. So just be aware of when you go into that, and stop beating yourself up with the shoulding and the ifing and the if only and why, and the rightness and the fairness of it, and then you can start to be responsive, which is very different to reactiveness, and where we're wanting to get to in that place of me responding to you, me feeling you, me feeling you, feeling me. That is interconnectedness, and it's a beautiful place to be in, right relationship with our interdependence on each other. There's a freedom in that space that's being called for more and more as we start to look at how can we out-create the old systems, how can we rebuild. And we can't rebuild until we actually let the old stories die and have no attachment to it, because then we're no longer living in the past. That is true freedom. And with Independence Day coming up on the 4th of July and the world moving the way that it is, I think that we've had a lot of time to introspect, now that our nervous systems have sort of come down out of that survival threat. But if you're finding yourself that still lingering in that place, just know that July is a beautiful month to really look at that. We've got Leo and Jupiter, and we've got the Sun and Pluto challenging each other. And this is really going to as I said, push us and trigger us in really taking a good, honest look and doing inventory again on what am I avoiding, what needs my attention, where do I need to actually remember my humanity, my humility, my entitlement, my shoulding, where I'm still forcing and pushing to get what I want that isn't kindness to you or your body or to other people, and to just keep practicing the work, practicing that space of noticing before you respond, going inward, the introspection. And if your boundaries have been violated and your needs are not being met, to look at what is it that you need? What is it that you require and desire in order to integrate those parts that are still hurting? So that's my thoughts and my insight on what's coming up in the next month. And I just, my soul prayer is that may we all keep feeling each other. May we keep doing the deep work on healing our shadow parts and rewiring our nervous system to a really healthy space where we can get out of that lower rung of survival and into our sexual chakra, our solar plexus chakra, where we know that we are all playing a beautiful part in bringing our talents and capacities to creating a beautiful new way of being in the earth that is sustainable and that is reverent of all life, and where we not only thrive, but we start to heal the planet and start to give back. So another great question is to ask, how can I be of greater service than I have been up until now? And I will meet you there. Have a good rest of the day. Lots of love.